Leaders from two of Italy's biggest parties have agreed on a power-sharing deal. This means Italy may finally be forming a government more than 2 months after the inconclusive elections in March. Leaders of the far-right League Party and the anti-establishment Five Star Movement are due to present their plan to the president to formalize the coalition. Well, Antonio Villafranca is co-head of the Europe and Global Governance Center at ISPI, the Italian Institute for International Political Studies. He joins us now from Milan via Skype. Thanks so much for speaking to us. Help us get a better understanding, really, of what this coalition represents. I mean, are they the Eurosceptic, anti-immigrant, right-wing leadership that some purport them to be?
Well, let me put it this way. I mean, what is happening in Italy is basically in line with what is happening in the rest of Europe, which is the crisis of traditional parties and the rise of anti-elites and nationalist parties. But there are two aggravating factors in Italy, if I may. The first one is that Italy has never fully recovered from the crisis, because our, for instance, GDP is still 7% lower than the pre-crisis level, while, for instance, in Germany, it is 11% higher. So this is one important thing. And the other thing is that basically Italy is divided in two countries, with a relatively rich north and a relatively poor south. So, and these two parties, these two coalition parties, they represent these two souls, these two different countries inside the same country, the north and the south.
That's interesting, but I mean, tell us how this new coalition, how will they manage dealing with Brussels and the European government? Go ahead.
It will be a very difficult task, actually, because, I mean, the honeymoon of these two parties with the Italian voters will last, of course, to the extent they will be able to deliver in their two main promises. The promises which was made by the League to the north, which is the flat tax, and the promise that the Five Star Movement made to the south, which is this universal basic income. If you put together these two measures, well, the cost is over 100 billion euros, which means more or less 6% of the Italian GDP. So this is the real challenge for the new government, to see if, to what extent, of course, they will be able to cover these huge expenses, and of course to present these measures to Brussels in such a way as to avoid a complete clash, of course, with the European institutions.
Okay. Antonio Villafranca, we'll have to leave it there, but thank you so much for sharing your insight with us from Milan.